Hello and welcome to another English podcast with Paul. I'm your host, Paul, and today we're going to talk about British traditions. So, British traditions. Before I get started, natural native English conversation, British English conversation, unedited and unscripted. Although, as always, I have some notes, so you'll maybe see me glancing over this way. Right, British traditions. So we British don't get overly excited. We're quite modest in this way. But some of the things we do or used to make a bit of a fuss about would be, for example, Guy Fawkes Night. Now, as young lads, sort of 10 years old, 12 years old, we would find some old trousers and maybe an old jumper and maybe stuff it full of newspapers, scrumple it all up and try and make a body. And then maybe we'd like make a head with a balloon or something round, put a hat on it, and try and make it look like a scruffy person. And often this Guy Fawkes would be sat maybe like on a skateboard or on some kind of trolley, so you could move it around. And basically, you're begging. You got a bucket, and you're asking for some money for Guy Fawkes. And inevitably, we would use the money for fireworks or something else around that time of the year. Um, they can be very, very creative. They can be a lot of fun. And at the end of the night or at the end of the weekend, because you might make it a few days before and collect some money, you'd put it on top of the bonfire. So it's really popular to have a bonfire, and people still now go to bonfire sessions where they have lots of sparklers for the children. It's a whole social event, a big bonfire, sparklers, and there'll be lots and lots of fireworks. Now, this obviously is expensive to buy fireworks, so often you would go to a big organized group and you'd buy a ticket and then you'd watch and you'd look up and go, oh, wow, ooh, look at that, amazing. And you'd get very excited. But it's a night out, you get to see the fire, you get to meet lots of other people, and can be a very good and exciting evening. All right, so that's what we kind of do for Guy Fawkes. Try and make some money and put this stuffed person of old clothes on top of a bonfire. That's quite exciting when you're young. All right, so that's Guy Fawkes. Next, we have Shrove Tuesday, also known as Pancake Day, or as the marketing media on the TV will have you know, Jif Lemon Day. And so I think this comes from probably Christian times where you would empty out your cupboard of cupboard under the stairs of food. Well, it might not be under the stairs, but your cupboard of food, and find what old tins you've got, things that are left over, and then you'd make food out of it. But more often than not, we talk about pancakes because that's the most common thing people used to make was pancakes. So you'd have a frying pan with, I don't know, eggs, batter and butter or whatever else, mix it up, and then you'd put it in your frying pan. And for us, it's always about who can flip the frying pan, not the frying pan, the pancake in the frying pan. And normally dad would be very good at this. And you flip up the frying pan really high, and the children would be watching. Ooh, dad, he's so great. And you'd have a lot of fun with it. And then, one would fall on the floor, the dog would eat that one. But you'd make, several pancakes for you and the children, and you'd cover it up with probably a squirt of lemon and then lots of sugar or Nutella these days. You put a lot of sugar and Nutella on it, and often banana. And so it's just basically like a sweet crepe. That's what it's kind of like in regards to the rest of Europe. It's like a crepe. And that'd be a lot of fun as well. You'd think about that a couple of days before, and that would be just a fun evening meal to have with the children. So that's Shrove Tuesday. All right. Cream teas. British get really excited about having a cream tea. All right. And then there's this debate between which is on the top. Do you have the cream on top of the cream cake, or do you have the cream on top? Did I just say the same thing twice? You have the cream on top and then the jam and then the top of the cream cake. So often it'll be like a scone. So a big, thick, it's not savory, but maybe a little bit sweet. A bit like a tea cake, but shorter and more crumbly. So you'd have one bit on the bottom with butter on it or margarine, and then another bit for the top, again with butter or margarine, and then you'd have cream in the middle and jam on top. Or, if you're a bit peculiar, you'd have it the other way around. You'd have jam on the bottom and cream on top. I may have said that wrong again. Anyway, you get the drift. So a cream tea, you have your scone and you have a cup of tea, and then you'd sit and enjoy that. It's often in places of natural beauty, maybe like, I don't know, places in Devon are very famous for it. Devon and Somerset, a cream tea, just basically a cup of tea with a cake. But we get quite excited about it and like to talk about it. Right. What else we got? Boxing Day. Now, this isn't the same everywhere around the world and not the same all over Europe. But in the UK, Boxing Day is normally a day where we all lounge around and maybe play some party games, have a bit of fun. Often there would be crackers left over from Christmas Day. We'd eat a lot of leftover foods, maybe like cold sandwiches with cold meat in them, regular sandwiches with cold meat in them, and we'd pick all day long. Maybe we'd even fry up some of the leftover food, like bubble and squeak. That's very much a British dish that I didn't put on my list. Bubble and squeak, often leftovers from the roast dinner. All right, so Boxing Day, like I said, is a day for chilling out or playing some games, going for a long walk. It's a bit like a Super Sunday, really. If Christmas was the ultimate best mega Sunday, then Boxing Day would be just a Super Sunday. Really good day to chill, have party games, connect with the family, and just basically relax and do not a lot. Maybe watch a couple of old films, that sort of thing. Just catch up with family and enjoy lounging around in front of a fire or in a house where it's nice and warm. Because obviously around Christmas it's cold. All right, what else do we have? Remembrance Day. Now, I think this is 11:11:11. So at 11 o'clock or 11 minutes past, I forget. On the radio and on the TV, there'll often be silence for 2 minutes. And that's really hard for young people to be silent for 2 minutes. But it's in regards to Remembrance Day. There'll be the BBC and a few other things in the news commemorating it and saying that somebody from the royal family has put a wreath and there was a big parade and people walked around and they had poppies and they went to a ceremony in the church, things like that. So it's kind of big. It's dying out, I think, because it's more for older generations, that remember the people that died during the wars, the First and Second World Wars. I don't know a huge amount about it, but I do know my 96-year-old granddad doesn't like it at all. He's not very happy about it at all, but I kind of agree with him. It's dying out a little bit. Anyway, put your thoughts and comments below. What do you think about D-Day, Remembrance Day, and things like that? Do you have a different day you recognized and talk about regarding the war or different wars? Let me know. Let me know what you think. Okay. Fish and chips. I obviously mentioned this in another video. You may not have seen that video yet, but fish and chips is a great British tradition. Soggy, soggy, golden, fat chips. So they're shorter than fries, but they're really fat. And the fact that they are actually fat means they're healthy because they're absorbing less oil. There's more potato and a lot less oil. And so they were considered a healthy meal. Especially if you like fish. I mean, obviously I don't eat the fish, but fish and chips used to be a good cheap meal and it fills you up, but it's become more and more expensive in recent years. So yeah, fish and chips, something to do on a Friday evening. Okay, fish and chips, okay. Morris dancing. Now, if you see this, you'll think people are crazy, right? Because these guys have got high socks on and like a bow on top of their socks. And then they're wearing like long shorts. And they'll often have bells on their knees or on their ankles. Bells, musical bells. And then they'll be having, and I think they got a shirt on and a handkerchief and maybe a hat. And they'll be holding these really big sticks. And there'll be a dance. There might be 8 people, might be more than this. But they're a dance that sort of goes crosswards, back and forth. And they bang sticks at each other. Now, as far as I know, this comes from pagan times, to frighten away the evil spirits and things like this. And for some reason it stayed. It's quite entertaining to watch and fun, and there's always a bit of alcohol afterwards, so that seems to liven it up a little bit. But yeah, Morris dancing, very, very odd, interesting. Okay, what else we got? Christmas pudding. Oh, Christmas pudding. Well, I go, oh, Christmas. I don't actually like Christmas pudding. But it's interesting in that it's a pudding on the table we have at Christmas time. It looks ugly, right? It's sort of black and it's been soaking for days in like maybe sherry or some other alcohol. And they put it on the plate. This is after the main Christmas dinner. And they light it and there's this blue flame that comes out. So it's quite impressive to look at and to see this golden blue flame. You can get other meals like this in restaurants, flambe. So yeah, when you're a young person, that's quite interesting. Christmas bud. I think it tastes horrible, but there you go. Right, what have we got? Maypole dance. Now this is often done in schools, especially around the beginning of the year. I think sort of, well, May, obviously. The maypole. Again, I think this is another pagan dance. Often just children, one boy and one girl. And there'd be this really tall pole. Often it would be like at the village festival or the village fete, something like that. And they would have practiced in school for weeks before. So you got this really tall pole. You got these long strips of ribbon coming off, probably like 10, 12, or even 14 strips of ribbon. And you're like, so yeah, one boy and one girl, and the girl will be dressed in traditional dress, which whatever that is, a dress, a flowy dress, and checkers. Can't remember the name for the checkers, but yeah, little squares. And the boys and girls will be opposite each other, and they'll do this thing where they go in and out, in and out, in and out, and they kind of like weave a plait in the ribbons. So that's interesting to watch, and if you want to find out more about that, then you can online. But that has happened for many, many, many years. I don't quite know why. There we go. Maypole dancing. Right. Sunday roast, I've mentioned that before. Again, it's just like when the family comes together and they eat meat with lots of vegetables. Often there'll be like Yorkshire pudding. Now, Yorkshire pudding obviously comes from Yorkshire, but you can have a big Yorkshire pudding. And they're really popular these days, a big Yorkshire pudding, because then inside that you have your gravy and lots of other foods inside this Yorkshire pudding. That's a separate dish altogether for another day. But you can now buy those at festivals or street vendors. You can have a roast Yorkshire pudding with food inside it. Really interesting, really different. So yeah, a Sunday roast, a bit like a Christmas dinner. Lots of trimmings, cheese sauce maybe, I don't know, all sorts of other stuff added. But it's a nice day to gather for the family and then just veg out afterwards and undo your top button of your trousers and go, and maybe eat some treats, some sweets, maybe a bit of cake later on. So yeah, a Sunday roast. It's very popular in the UK. And we kind of search for that as well when we go to other countries. We're looking for somewhere where we can get a Sunday roast. All right, what else have we got? Halloween, the end of October. So it's still celebrated and talked about in schools. This is where we sort of get dressed up, very much like America, get dressed up. And there might be 4 or 5 kids together and they would knock on a door. People may have skeletons outside or a cauldron and they would say, trick or treat, trick or treat. And if you open the door, or you might have a basket outside for children to take some sweets or something else. Sometimes it might be an apple or a little orange, little like satsuma, something like that. And apparently if you say trick, then the children can throw an egg at your door and flour. But that really doesn't ever happen. Nobody bothers with that anymore. But it's nice if you've got young children and you live in a small estate where it's safe for them to walk around at night, after it gets dark, sort of like 6 or 7 o'clock in the UK. And then they get a big bunch of sweets or whatever and show off their costumes. And then sometimes you think, what is this costume? And it may be something not Halloween-esque, maybe something from a TV show or a film. So that can be fun. A lot of adults get involved with that. They'll have spooky stuff, cobwebs and spiders and all things decorating their garden and their front door. So that can be a bit of fun in the UK. Right, what else we got? Pearly kings and queens, Cockney kings. So I haven't seen this very often, but I do remember seeing it. And so this is obviously Cockney from London Cockney. All right, geezer, how's it going? All right, mate. You know, kind of that market, like the TV show EastEnders, that kind of thing. And so, again, this comes from a tradition of people giving money to those that are less fortunate. And I think it started with the Pearly King. He got a load of pearl buttons, you know, like for your shirt buttons, and all different types of buttons. Google it; it's quite interesting. And he sewed them all over his suit. And I think that's the way he raised awareness for collecting money for those that are a lot less fortunate. And that was back in the early 1900s. So yeah, it's gone back for quite a long way, quite a long way. But yeah, okay. Notting Hill Carnival. Now, some of you may have seen Notting Hill film with Hugh Grant, and I think there was a famous American actress in it as well. Quite a few famous British characters in there. It's not actually something I've ever visited or been to, but I'm aware it's a big carnival and quite exciting and fun and lots of things happening. You know, a time for jolly time for messing around, drinking and laughing and joking, that kind of thing. But down here in the south of the UK, I don't know if it's the same everywhere else, but in the south of the UK, we often have carnivals. Now, the biggest carnival we have is the Bridgewater Carnival. So you'll have like a tractor that's all decorated with lights and all sorts of things, so you don't know it's a tractor. And it's pulling this big trailer, this really big trailer, and it'll have many people on it often, and that'll be covered in lights and moving things. It's quite a spectacular. And it's a competition of who looks the most interesting. And there'd be music blaring from it and people dancing on it. Really quite a spectacle to watch. Some of them are really good and really big. And again, this is in November time, so it's normally quite cold and sometimes raining. So it helps cheer you up. The children get involved and all the streets are lined. So it might go on for a mile or more. And the streets are all lined by the public and, you know, people selling chips or burgers, you know, on the sides. But there's just be a whole long procession. And sometimes you'll have like the Boys Brigade, you'll have the Scouts and the majorettes with their twirly sticks. You might have a bus company, the fire engine sometimes, or an ambulance. Often there'll be individuals on their own collecting money. And it's, I don't know, it's something that everybody gets involved with. This often goes around a lot of the towns as well. So Bridgewater is by far the biggest and known sort of countrywide. And then there'll be a pared down version to go to some of the other towns, and they all get involved as well with this competition and raising money and awareness for different charities. But that's really good to watch as well. All right then. The last thing I was going to say here really is Druids and pagans, pre-Christians, probably brought in from the Celtics from Central Europe, all around Europe, I suppose. So yeah, occasionally we have a day where there's pagans at Stonehenge. I think Stonehenge allows pagans in on the summer solstice and the winter solstice, and they have a ceremony. Often you hear about pagans also at Totnes and Glastonbury. And then they talk about these ley lines, these magical lines that run crisscross over the country, where there is supposed to be mystical, I don't know, tracks or lines. And allegedly you can see, like from Glastonbury tour to another tour and another tour. And anyway, so they talk about these lines. Druids and pagans. The other thing as well they talk about is divining rods. And that's a piece of wood that's joined in a V or a Y shape. And apparently you can hold it and you can feel when there's water below the ground. Also, you can get other divining rods that are made of metal and then it just goes inside a sheath, and you have two of them, and they move like this, and they move towards the water. Now, that's an unusual science. I don't know anything about it, but it seems to work. It's very bizarre. So yeah, divining rods, paganism, druids, very interesting settlements and history in the UK. So that's it for today. That's just some of them. We could talk about the flag as well next time, maybe, because the flag's interesting, the combination of the different countries and UK. But that's it for today. If you have any questions or thoughts or worries, then put something down in the comments below. Tell me what's interesting about your cultures. Tell me what you like most about your cultures and what other visitors should see. Let me know in the comments. And if you get a moment, just give me a subscribe. Lots of you aren't subscribing and it's not helping the channel for and me. If you get a moment, I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, so as always, have fun learning and I'll see you in the next video. Take care for now. Bye-bye.